I need to get this out because what happened last night has me questioning whether I went too far. But honestly, I don't think I did. If you're reading this expecting me to feel guilty, save yourself some time and click away now. I'm 29. My brother Jude is 32. He's a cardiologist. I work in commercial real estate development. Those 3 facts right there explain my entire childhood. But let me paint you the full picture because you need to understand why I did what I did. Growing up, Jude could do no wrong. Perfect grades, medical school, prestigious residency program. Mom literally keeps a scrapbook of his accomplishments in the living room. Every holiday gathering included a tour of Jude's latest achievement. His face is on the family Christmas card. Just his face. Mine stopped appearing around age 12. When relatives asked where I was in the photo, Mom said they wanted to highlight Jude's medical school acceptance. The next year it was his residency. The year after that, his fellowship. There was always a reason. I wasn't a bad kid. I played baseball through high school, made decent grades, got my degree in business. But Dad runs a commercial development firm, and I think he resented that I didn't want to immediately join the family business right after college. I spent 5 years working for a competitor, learning the industry on my own terms. I'm actually good at what I do now. I've closed some significant deals. Doesn't matter to them. The favoritism wasn't subtle. Jude got a new Audi when he finished his residency. I got a card with $50 for my college graduation. When Jude bought his first house, Dad and Mom covered the down payment. When I bought my condo 2 years ago with my own money, Mom asked if I was sure I could afford the mortgage. Jude's engagement was announced at a family party with champagne and catered food. When I mentioned I was dating someone seriously last year, Dad said that's nice and changed the subject to ask Jude about a patient case. I stopped expecting anything from them years ago. I built my own life, made my own money, created my own success. Every achievement I earned was fuel for what I knew would eventually come because I'm not stupid. I knew one day they'd need something from me. And I made sure that when that day came, I'd be ready. The wedding was 3 months ago, September 14th. Jude married Sabrina, another doctor. It was at this hotel ballroom downtown, easily 300 guests. I wore my best suit, showed up on time, sat in the back where I was assigned, not in the family section. In the back with distant cousins and my parents' colleagues who probably didn't know Jude had a brother. The ceremony was fine. Then came the reception, dinner service, first dance, all the normal wedding stuff. Then Mom stood up to give her speech. I should have known something was coming because Dad had this smirk on his face the entire evening like he knew a joke nobody else had heard yet. Mom tapped her champagne glass. Everyone went quiet. She started talking about Jude, about watching him grow into this accomplished man, how proud she was. Standard mother of the groom's speech. Then she said she wanted to talk about family, about how some children are gifts and others are lessons. I actually thought she was going somewhere philosophical with it. She turned, looked directly at me in the back of the ballroom and said, "I only have one son. This thing standing in the back is just a mistake I made 29 years ago when I wasn't thinking clearly. Jude is my pride, my doctor, my everything. The other one can't even afford a suit that fits properly." The room went dead silent for maybe 3 seconds. Then people started laughing. Not uncomfortable chuckles, full laughs, like she'd told the funniest joke they'd ever heard. Some of Dad's business associates were practically doubled over. Jude was grinning. Sabrina had her hand over her mouth, but her eyes were laughing. Dad stood up next. He added that they should have given me up for adoption when they had the chance. That every family has one child who's a disappointment. And at least I'd given them perspective on how good they had it with Jude. More laughter. Someone actually clapped. I sat there with wine on my blazer because Sabrina had thrown her glass at me during Mom's speech. The liquid was soaking through to my shirt. I could feel every eye in that ballroom on me. Could hear the laughter echoing off the vaulted ceiling. I wiped my face with a napkin. I stood up. I looked at each of them. Mom, Dad, Jude, Sabrina. I smiled and I walked out. It was raining. I stood in the parking lot for a minute letting the water wash the wine off my jacket. Then I got in my car and drove home. I showered. I sat down at my desk and I made 3 phone calls and sent 1 email. Here's what nobody in that ballroom knew. When I worked for Dad's competitor for those 5 years, I learned things. Commercial real estate development isn't just about buildings. It's about relationships, partnerships, financing, and trust. Dad's firm had a business partner, someone who'd been with him for 15 years. This partner handled most of the financial oversight while Dad managed client relationships and project development. 4 years ago, I discovered something. Dad was having an affair with his partner's wife. I found out because I was still on Dad's insurance at the time, and a medical bill came to my address by mistake. The bill was for an STI test at a clinic across town. Dad doesn't go to clinics. He has a fancy concierge doctor, but his partner's wife worked near that clinic. I did some digging. I won't bore you with the details, but I confirmed it. I never said anything. I just filed the information away. 2 years ago, I learned something else. Mom had taken out a second mortgage on their house without telling Dad. She'd gotten involved in some multi-level marketing scheme, lost about $60,000, and covered it by refinancing. Dad had no idea because Mom handled all their personal finances. I found out because I do title searches as part of my job and happened to run their address when I was checking comps in their neighborhood for a client. Public records don't lie. Last year, I discovered that Jude's perfect marriage-to-be had a complication. Sabrina was still legally married to someone else. Not separated, not divorced, still married. She'd gotten married right out of college to her high school boyfriend. They'd moved apart for medical school, and apparently she'd just never filed for divorce. I found out because I ran a background check when Jude first started dating her. You can find out a lot about people when you know where to look. So that night, September 14th, I went home and made my calls. First call was to Dad's business partner. I told him everything about the affair, dates, locations, details. I'd kept records for 4 years. He didn't want to believe me, but I sent him copies of hotel receipts I'd found in Dad's car when I borrowed it once. Text message screenshots I'd taken from Dad's old phone before he upgraded. Yeah, I've been preparing. Second call was to Dad's primary lender, the bank that held the mortgage on his company's main office building. I told them they should look into the personal guarantees on Dad's loans. Specifically, they should verify that the collateral property listed still had the equity Dad claimed it did, because if that house had a second mortgage Mom took out, Dad's loan documents were fraudulent. He'd signed papers saying the house was unencumbered. It wasn't. Third call was to Sabrina's actual legal husband. Took me a while to find him, but I did. He was living in Oregon, working as a pharmacist. Nice guy, actually. We talked for an hour. Eye-opening. I told him his wife was getting married to someone else in 3 weeks and that he might want to do something about that. He'd been trying to get in touch with Sabrina for 2 years to finalize their divorce, but she'd blocked him on everything. Turns out he still loved her and had been holding out hope. When I told him she was marrying Jude, something in him snapped. He said he'd been too nice for too long. The email was to Mom's MLM upline, the woman who'd recruited her into the scheme. I detailed exactly how much money Mom had lost and suggested that perhaps the Federal Trade Commission might be interested in their business practices. I CC'd about 40 people from Mom's social circle who I knew she'd been trying to recruit. Then I waited. Days passed, a week, 2 weeks. I went to work, closed a major deal on a mixed-use development, lived my life. I didn't call them, didn't text, didn't check in. I knew what was coming. I'd spent years making sure every piece was in place for this exact moment. 67 days after the wedding, my phone exploded. 89 missed calls. Text messages from everyone. Mom, Dad, Jude, Sabrina, aunts, uncles, family, friends. The messages were all variations of the same thing. Dad's business partner had pulled out of their firm. He'd taken half their clients with him. The bank had called Dad's loans. They were demanding full repayment because he'd misrepresented his assets. The house was being foreclosed on because between the original mortgage, the second mortgage Mom took out, and the business loans tied to it, they were underwater by $200,000. Mom had a breakdown, complete psychological break. She'd been served with a cease and desist from the MLM company's legal team, threatening to sue her for defamation. Her friends had turned on her. She wasn't handling it well. Jude's wedding was invalid. Sabrina's legal husband had shown up with a lawyer and threatened to file bigamy charges. Sabrina had to retain a criminal defense attorney. The medical board was asking questions because bigamy can affect professional licensing. Jude was furious because this was destroying Sabrina's career before it even started. The messages all said the same thing. Please call back. We're begging you. What did you do to us? How do we fix this? We're sorry. Please. I read every message. All 127 of them. I listened to every voicemail. Then I blocked all their numbers and went to bed. I'm writing this because my uncle found me on social media yesterday. He said, Mom's in the hospital. That this stress nearly killed her. He said, you're tearing the family apart. He said, whatever they did to me, this response is cruel and I need to make it right. But here's the thing. I didn't do anything illegal. I told the truth to people who deserve to know it. Dad's partner deserved to know about the affair. The bank deserved to know about the fraudulent loan documents. Sabrina's husband deserved to know his wife was committing bigamy. Mom's friends deserved to know they were being scammed into a pyramid scheme. I just shared information. That's all. The consequences are on them, not me. They built this house of cards. I just pointed out that it was on fire. Part of me wonders if I should feel guilty. The other part of me remembers standing in that ballroom with wine dripping down my face while 300 people laughed at me being called a mistake. While my own mother told a room full of people she wished she'd aborted me. While my father said I was a disappointment he'd settle for in exchange for having Jude. So, no, I don't think I went too far. I think I went exactly far enough. They're still trying to reach me. New numbers, emails, social media accounts. I've blocked everything. I'm done. They wanted one son. They got one son. They can figure this out with him. Update 1. Alright. So, I said this was far from over and holy hell was I right. Buckle up because the last 2 weeks have been absolutely insane and I'm starting to understand just how deep this goes. First off, shout out to everyone who commented on my original post telling me I did the right thing. I'm not going to lie, reading those comments helped. I've spent 29 years being told I'm the problem. So having a few thousand strangers confirm I'm not crazy means something. Now for what's happened since. Because my family isn't the type to just accept consequences and move on. Oh no, they're fighters. Unfortunately for them, so am I. 3 days after I posted, I came home from work to find Jude sitting on the steps outside my building. Not near my building, on my steps. He'd been waiting for 2 hours, according to the timestamp on the aggressive text he sent right before I pulled into the parking garage. I almost turned around and left, but I'm not running from these people anymore. He stood up when he saw me. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. He said we needed to talk and that I couldn't avoid this forever. I told him I wasn't avoiding anything. I just had nothing to say to him. He followed me to my door anyway. Here's where it gets interesting. Jude didn't come to apologize. He came to negotiate. That's what he called it, a negotiation. Like this was a business deal and not him facing consequences for laughing while Mom called me a mistake in front of 300 people. He said the situation had gotten out of hand, that yes, what happened at the wedding was inappropriate, and he understood why I was upset, but what I'd done in response was nuclear and disproportionate. He actually used those words. Nuclear and disproportionate. I asked him how many people laughing at your existence felt proportionate and he didn't have an answer for that. Then he got to the real reason he was there. Sabrina's in serious trouble. The bigamy thing isn't just an embarrassment. It's a potential criminal charge. Her hospital is investigating because having an active criminal case can affect her medical license. She might lose her position in the cardiology fellowship she just started. Jude said this was destroying her career before it even began and that I was ruining an innocent person's life. I laughed. I actually laughed in his face. I told him Sabrina threw wine on me at her wedding reception while everyone laughed at me being called a mistake. I told him Sabrina chose to marry him while still being legally married to someone else. I told him that's called consequences and maybe she should try being more careful about her life choices. He got angry then. Really angry. Said I was being petty and vindictive. Said this was about more than just hurt feelings. Said people's entire lives were falling apart because I couldn't take a joke. A joke. He called it a joke. I asked him if he thought it was funny. If he laughed. He said that wasn't the point. I told him it was exactly the point. He stood there in that ballroom and grinned while Mom eviscerated me in front of everyone we knew. He didn't defend me. Didn't pull her aside. Didn't say a single word in my defense. He enjoyed it. He denied that. Said he was uncomfortable but didn't want to make a scene at his own wedding. I told him Mom made the scene, not me. I just left. Everything that happened after that was them reaping what they sowed. Then Jude tried a different approach. He said Dad was going to lose everything, the house, the business, his reputation. That Dad's partner taking half the clients had destroyed the firm's cash flow and now Dad couldn't make payroll. That 3 employees had already quit. That Dad was going to have to declare bankruptcy and it would ruin him professionally. I asked Jude why I should care. He said, because Dad is still our father. I told him, Dad stopped being my father the second he stood up at that wedding and said they should have given me up for adoption. Jude said I was being dramatic. That Dad was just drunk and playing along with Mom's speech. That he didn't mean it. But here's the thing, drunk words are sober thoughts. And even if Dad was just playing along, he still said it. He still humiliated me in front of everyone. And nobody stopped him. Not Jude, not Sabrina, not one single person in that ballroom. Jude realized the emotional angle wasn't working, so he switched to practical matters. He said they needed my help, that I was the only one in the family with liquid assets and good credit, that if I would just co-sign a loan for Dad he could keep the business afloat until he rebuilt his client base, that it would only be temporary and I'd be paid back with interest. I told him no. Guess why? I said because I don't help people who publicly humiliate me. He said I was being childish. I told him to get off my property. He didn't leave. He said there was more I needed to know. That Mom was actually in bad shape. Not just stressed, but really falling apart. She'd been hospitalized for 3 days after what he called a nervous breakdown. She wasn't eating, wasn't sleeping. The doctor said she was having a severe anxiety crisis and needed psychiatric care. I asked if she'd apologized yet. Jude looked confused. I repeated the question. Had Mom actually apologized for calling me a mistake, or was she just upset that her life was falling apart? He said she was too unwell to have that conversation right now. I said, then we have nothing to discuss. Jude got desperate. He said I didn't understand how serious this was. That Mom might actually hurt herself. That the doctor was worried about her mental state. He said if something happened to her, it would be on me. And that's when I lost it. Not angry. Lost it. Cold. Lost it. I told Jude that for 29 years I watched them celebrate him and ignore me. That I spent my entire childhood being the kid who wasn't good enough, wasn't smart enough, wasn't the right kind of son. That I built my entire life knowing my own parents didn't want me. That I made myself successful specifically so that one day when they needed something from me, I could say no. I told him I spent 4 years collecting information. 4 years knowing about Dad's affair, about Mom's secret mortgage, about Sabrina's hidden marriage. For years waiting for the perfect moment to use it. And they handed me that moment on a silver platter when they humiliated me in front of 300 people. I told them this wasn't about hurt feelings. This was about consequences. This was about them learning that the son they treated like garbage actually had power. That the mistake they made 29 years ago grew up to be someone who could destroy their comfortable little lives with 3 phone calls and an email. Jude stared at me. He said I was sick, that I needed help, that normal people don't spend years planning revenge on their own family. I told him normal families don't publicly disown their children at weddings. He left, but not before telling me that everyone in the family knew what I'd done now. That he'd told them everything. That aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone knew I'd deliberately destroyed Dad's business and Mom's reputation and Sabrina's career. That they all thought I was a monster. I told him, good. Let them know. Let them all know exactly what happens when you push someone too far. That was 6 days ago. Since then, things have escalated in ways I didn't expect. First, my grandfather called. Dad's father. He's 81 and I haven't talked to him in probably 3 years. He said he wanted to understand what happened. I explained everything. The wedding, the humiliation, my response. He listened to the whole thing without interrupting. Then he said something that actually surprised me. He said Dad had always been like this. That when Dad was young, he'd had another son, a son from a previous relationship before he married Mom. That Dad had essentially abandoned that kid when he met Mom because the kid wasn't impressive enough, wasn't going to be successful enough. That Dad only wanted children who made him look good. I had no idea. I asked what happened to that kid. Grandfather said he didn't know. Dad cut off all contact and refused to discuss it. But Grandfather said it explained a lot about how Dad treated me. That Dad saw children as accessories to his image. Jude enhanced that image. I didn't. Grandfather said he wasn't excusing what they did, but he wanted me to understand where it came from. Then he said something else. He said he was changing his will. That he'd originally left everything split between Dad and his sister, but after hearing what happened, he was cutting Dad out entirely. Everything was going to me and my Aunt Anna instead. I told him that wasn't necessary. He said yes, it was. That Dad needed to learn that actions have consequences. That you can't treat people like garbage and expect to inherit anything from the people you've hurt. This opened a whole new problem because apparently Grandfather told Dad about the will change. Dad called Grandfather screaming. Said I was manipulating an old man. Said I was poisoning family relationships. Grandfather hung up on him. Now Dad's sister Anna is involved. Aunt Anna always liked me. She was one of the few family members who actually acknowledged my existence at family gatherings. She called me yesterday, said she heard what happened at the wedding and she was disgusted. Said she'd had words with Mom and Dad and they'd essentially told her to mind her own business. But here's where it gets complicated. Aunt Anna said she understood why I did what I did, but she was worried about the collateral damage. See, Dad's business employed people, regular people with families and mortgages. When Dad's partner left and took half the clients, those employees lost their jobs. Anna said some of them were really struggling, and did I feel any responsibility for that? Honestly, I hadn't thought about Dad's employees. They weren't part of the equation. But Anna made a good point. Those people didn't humiliate me. They didn't do anything wrong. They just worked for my father and now they're collateral damage. I don't know how to feel about that. Part of me says that's not my problem. Dad's business failed because Dad committed loan fraud and Dad had an affair with his business partner's wife. Those were Dad's choices, not mine. But another part of me recognizes that real people are suffering because of this chain reaction I started. Anna said she wasn't asking me to fix everything, but maybe I could help with something specific. One of Dad's former employees, a woman named Celeste, was Dad's office manager for 12 years. Single mom, 2 kids. She lost her job when the firm collapsed, and she's scrambling to find something new. Anna asked if I knew of any openings in commercial real estate. I told Anna I'd think about it. I haven't decided yet because helping Celeste feels like helping Dad in some indirect way, and I'm not sure I'm ready for that. Meanwhile, Jude hasn't given up. He's been messaging Aunt Anna trying to get her to pressure me. He's telling anyone who will listen that I'm mentally unstable and that I plan this revenge for years like some kind of psychopath. He's actually using the word psychopath in family group chats. The family is splitting. Some people think I went too far. Some people think Mom and Dad deserved it. It's causing fights at family gatherings I'm not even attending. Apparently, Thanksgiving is going to be a disaster because half the family isn't speaking to the other half. And through all of this, Mom, Dad, Jude, and Sabrina haven't actually apologized. Not once. They've asked for help. They've called me names. They've tried to guilt me. But nobody has actually said I'm sorry for humiliating you at the wedding. That's what I keep coming back to. They want forgiveness without apology. They want help without accountability. They want me to fix the problems their own actions created while still maintaining that I'm the one who's wrong. I'm not doing it. I'm standing firm on this. But I'd be lying if I said this wasn't getting complicated. Because now it's not just about them anymore. It's about Grandfather and Aunt Anna and former employees and family members taking sides. It's spiraling into something bigger than I anticipated. Someone in the comments on my original post asked if I had a plan for what comes next. Honestly, I'm making this up as I go now. I had a plan for the initial revenge. I didn't have a plan for the aftermath. But here's what I do know. I'm not backing down. I'm not apologizing. And I'm definitely not co-signing any loans or helping them rebuild what they destroyed. They made their choices. Now they get to live with them. Update 2 coming soon. This is getting messier by the day. Okay, so I need to get this out while it's still fresh because what happened yesterday has completely changed the trajectory of this situation. And I'm genuinely questioning whether I've created something I can't control anymore. First, thanks to everyone who commented on my last update, the people saying I should help Celeste, Dad's former office manager. You made good points. I reached out to her through Aunt Anna and connected her with my boss. She interviewed and got hired. Not because I'm helping Dad, but because Celeste didn't do anything wrong, and punishing her for having a terrible boss seemed unfair. She starts Monday. Anna thanked me. I told her not to read too much into it. Now, for what's happened in the last week because it's been absolutely chaotic. Mom got out of the hospital 4 days ago. She didn't call me. She showed up at my office, just walked right into the building, past reception, and knocked on my office door during a client meeting. Security had to escort her out. She was screaming the entire time about how I was killing her, how I destroyed the family. How could I do this to my own mother? My client was mortified. I apologized and rescheduled. Then I went down to the parking lot where security was trying to get Mom to leave. She was sitting on the ground next to her car, refusing to move. She said she wasn't leaving until I talked to her. I told security to call the police if she didn't leave in 5 minutes. She left, but she didn't give up. She came back the next day and the day after that. Different times trying to catch me. On the third day, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop near my office just to end the harassment. I told her she had 15 minutes. We sat down. She looked terrible, like she'd aged 10 years in 2 months. She started crying immediately. Said she didn't understand how things had gotten so bad. Said she never meant to hurt me at the wedding, that it was just supposed to be a funny speech about how proud she was of Jude. I asked her what part of calling me a mistake was supposed to be funny. She said I was taking it out of context, that she was trying to make a point about how sometimes unexpected things turn out okay in the end. I told her that's not what she said. She said, well, that's what she meant and I should have understood that. This is what dealing with my mother is like. She rewrites history while you're sitting there having lived through it. She tells you your memories are wrong and you're crazy for being upset about things that didn't happen the way you remember them. It's been like this my entire life. I told her I remembered exactly what she said, every word. That I'd been replaying it in my head for 2 months. She said that was my problem, that I'd always been too sensitive and too focused on perceived slights instead of appreciating what I had. That she'd given me a good home and a good education, and this was how I repaid her. I asked her if she'd come to apologize or to tell me why I should be grateful for being publicly humiliated. She said she came to ask me to stop whatever I was doing to the family, to fix what I'd broken. I told her I hadn't broken anything. She had. She said that was ridiculous, that all of this started when I made those phone calls. I told her all of this started when Dad had an affair with his business partner's wife and she took out a secret second mortgage and Jude married someone who was already married. She said those were private family matters that I had no business exposing. I told her there's no such thing as private when you publicly destroy someone at a wedding in front of 300 people. That she declared open season on family privacy when she called me a mistake in front of everyone we knew. She said I was being vindictive and cruel, that I was punishing everyone for one bad night. I told her it wasn't one bad night. It was 29 years of being the wrong son, of being ignored, dismissed, and treated like I didn't matter. The wedding was just the culmination of a lifetime of being told I wasn't good enough. She said that wasn't true, that they'd always loved me. I asked her to name one time she'd supported me, one achievement she'd celebrated, one moment where she'd chosen me over Jude. She couldn't. She just sat there crying and saying I was remembering things wrong. Then she switched tactics. Said Dad was going to lose everything, that they'd probably be homeless by Christmas. That I had the power to stop it and I was choosing not to. I asked her why I should help someone who told 300 people they should have given me up for adoption. She said Dad didn't mean it. I told her drunk words are sober thoughts. She said if I didn't help them, they'd have to move in with Jude. I said that sounds like Jude's problem. She said Jude couldn't afford to support them and pay his own mortgage and cover Sabrina's legal fees. I said then maybe Sabrina shouldn't have committed bigamy. She said I was being deliberately obtuse and that this was all my fault for ruining Sabrina's life. That's when I lost my patience. I told Mom that Sabrina ruined her own life by marrying my brother while still married to someone else. That Sabrina threw wine on me at the wedding. That Sabrina was facing legal consequences for illegal actions she chose to take. That none of that was my fault. Mom said I could have kept my mouth shut, that I could have let Sabrina handle her divorce quietly without involving her ex-husband. I told her that ships sailed when they humiliated me, that they don't get to treat me like garbage and then demand my silence about their secrets. She called me selfish, said I was more concerned with revenge than with family. I told her she was more concerned with appearances than with how she treated people. She said I was just like my father. I asked which father she meant because apparently Dad has another son nobody told me about. She went pale. That's where I heard that. I told her grandfather told me. She said grandfather was a senile old man who didn't know what he was talking about. I said grandfather seemed pretty sharp when he changed his will to cut Dad out. She asked how I knew about the will. I said grandfather told me that too. Mom stood up, said this conversation was over, that I'd poisoned grandfather against Dad and now I was using that to hurt the family more. I told her I didn't poison anyone. I just told grandfather the truth and he made his own decision. She said I'd regret this. That family is forever and I was burning bridges I'd need someday. I told her I'd never needed those bridges before, so I wasn't worried about it now. She left. I finished my coffee and went back to work. That was 3 days ago. Yesterday, everything escalated in a way I didn't see coming. Dad showed up at my condo. He had a key. My key. The spare I'd given Mom years ago for emergencies. He let himself into my home while I was at work and was sitting in my living room when I got home at 7 p.m. I walked in, saw him sitting on my couch, and genuinely didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to call the police. Part of me wanted to hear what he had to say. I settled for standing in my own living room and asking what he was doing there. Dad said we needed to have a conversation, man to man, without Mom or Jude or anyone else involved. Just the two of us. I told him he'd broken into my home and he needed to leave. He said it wasn't breaking in if he had a key. I told him that key was for emergencies and this wasn't an emergency. He said yes it was. Then Dad did something I'd never seen him do before. He cried, not just teared up. Actually cried. Said he'd lost everything. That his business was gone. His reputation was destroyed. His partner had turned half the industry against him. That he was going to lose the house. That Mom was falling apart. That Jude was drowning in debt trying to help Sabrina with her legal problems. I asked him if he'd come to apologize. He said he'd come to ask me to stop. I said, that's not an apology. He said, fine. He was sorry about the wedding. Sorry about the speech. Sorry about saying they should have given me up for adoption. Happy now? I told him that's not how apologies work. That you don't say sorry and then immediately ask if that makes things better. That an actual apology involves understanding what you did wrong and showing genuine remorse. He said he was showing remorse. I said no. He was showing desperation. Dad got angry. Then said I'd always been like this. Always needed to be the center of attention. Always needed reassurance and validation. Said Jude never needed his hand held through life. That Jude just went out and achieved things without needing constant praise. I told Dad that I'd achieved plenty without praise because I'd never gotten any. That I'd built my career and bought my home and made my success entirely on my own while Jude got funding and support and celebration for everything he did. Dad said that's because Jude's accomplishments were worth celebrating. He said it like that. Worth celebrating. I asked him what that meant. He said Jude was saving lives. I'm moving paper around on real estate deals. Jude was making a difference in the world. I was just making money. Jude had dedicated his life to helping people. I dedicated mine to helping myself. And there it was. The real reason. After 29 years, Dad finally said it out loud. I wasn't worthy of celebration because my work wasn't important enough. Because making money wasn't noble enough. Because I wasn't saving lives, so I didn't matter as much. I told Dad that he ran a commercial real estate development firm, that he'd spent his entire career doing exactly what I do now. That if my work wasn't important, then neither was his. He said that was different. I asked how. He said because he'd built something. He'd created a legacy. I was just working for someone else's company. I reminded him that I'd offered to join his firm multiple times over the years, and he'd always said no. That he'd told me I needed to prove myself first, that I needed to show I was serious about the industry, that I couldn't just ride his coattails. He said I'd quit after 5 years with his competitor, which proved I wasn't committed. I told him I quit because I got a better offer. He said that's exactly his point. I didn't have loyalty. We went in circles like this for an hour. Every point I made, he had a counterargument. Every example I gave of him favoring Jude, he had an explanation for why it made sense. Every time I tried to get him to see how his treatment affected me, he found a way to make it my fault for being too sensitive or not understanding the bigger picture. Finally, I told him to leave. He said we weren't done talking. I said yes, we were. He said if I didn't help him save the business, he'd sue me. I asked for what? He said slander. That I'd deliberately spread lies to destroy his reputation. I told him truth isn't slander. He said he'd find something. That he'd make my life hell if I didn't cooperate. I pulled out my phone and called the police. Told them someone had broken into my home and was refusing to leave. Dad stood up, said I was really going to have him arrested. Said yes. He said I was unbelievable, that he'd raised me, and this was how I treated him. I told him he hadn't raised me. He tolerated me. There's a difference. The police arrived 15 minutes later. Dad was still there, still arguing, still trying to convince me that I was the problem. The officers asked what was going on. I explained that this man had let himself into my home without permission and was refusing to leave. Dad said he was my father and we were having a family discussion. The officer asked if I wanted to press charges for trespassing. I looked at Dad, gave him one more chance to just leave. He said he wasn't going anywhere until I agreed to help. So, I told the officer yes, I wanted to press charges. Dad was escorted out. He yelled the entire time. Said I'd regret this. That family means something. That you don't abandon your parents when they need you. That I was dead to him. The officers put him in the car. I gave my statement. They said someone would follow up within 48 hours about the trespassing charge. After they left, I sat in my living room for an hour just processing what had happened. My father had broken into my home, cried, apologized without meaning it, insulted my career, threatened to sue me, and then told me I was dead to him when I had him arrested. And through all of it, he never once took actual responsibility. Never once said, I understand why you're angry. Never once acknowledged that his actions and words had consequences. It was all just excuses and justifications and finding ways to make everything my fault. I called Aunt Anna afterward, told her what happened. She was horrified. Said she'd talk to Dad. I told her not to bother, that nothing she said would change his mind. She said she had to try because this was getting out of control. I told her it got out of control the moment Mom stood up at that wedding. Anna said she understood why I did what I did, but watching the family tear itself apart was painful. That Dad and Mom had made terrible choices, but they were still family. That grandfather refusing to speak to Dad was breaking his heart. That Christmas was going to be a disaster because nobody knew whose side to take. I told Anna she didn't have to take a side. That this was between me and them. She said it stopped being just between us when grandfather changed his will and Dad's business collapsed and family members started fighting at gatherings. That my actions had ripple effects I might not have intended. She's right about that. I didn't intend for grandfather to cut Dad out of his will. I didn't intend for the family to split into factions. I just wanted consequences for the people who humiliated me. But consequences don't exist in a vacuum. They spread out and affect everyone connected to the situation. Here's where I'm at now. Dad's facing a trespassing charge. Mom's harassing me at work. Jude's calling me a psychopath in family group chats. Sabrina's still dealing with her legal issues. The family is fractured. Thanksgiving is in 3 weeks and apparently it's going to be a war zone. And I still don't feel bad. That probably makes me the villain in a lot of people's eyes. But I spent 29 years being treated like I didn't matter. And I'm not going to feel guilty for finally making them face consequences. Someone asked in the comments if I had an endgame, if I knew where this was going. Honestly, I don't. I just know I'm not backing down, not apologizing, not helping them, not pretending that 29 years of being the wrong son can be fixed with a forced apology and a request for money. They want their lives back. I want the 29 years I spent being ignored. We're both going to be disappointed. Final update. Alright, this is it. The ending you've all been waiting for. And let me tell you, it's been one hell of a 3 weeks since my last update. First, to address everyone asking if I'm okay. Yeah, I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. Meanwhile, my family is imploding and I have front row seats to the whole disaster. Let me catch you up on everything that's happened because it all came to a head last week in the most spectacular way possible. The trespassing charge against Dad went through. He had to go to court, got slapped with a fine and a restraining order that says he can't come within 500 feet of my home or workplace. He tried to argue it was all a misunderstanding. The judge didn't care. Dad now has a criminal record at age 63. That's going to be fun explaining to potential clients when he tries to rebuild his business. Speaking of the business, it's officially dead. Dad filed for bankruptcy 2 weeks ago. The office building is being sold to cover debts. Everything he spent 35 years building is gone. And here's the kicker. Dad's former partner is already starting his own firm and taking the remaining clients with him. Dad's name is toxic in the industry now. Nobody wants to work with someone who committed loan fraud and had an affair with his business partner's wife. Mom and Dad lost the house. The foreclosure went through last Monday. They had to be out by Friday. Jude and Sabrina let them move into their guest room temporarily, which is exactly what I predicted would happen. Now Jude's drowning in expenses trying to support 4 people on his salary while also paying Sabrina's legal bills. Oh, and speaking of Sabrina, her ex-husband from Oregon did file for divorce finally, but he's not making it easy. He's asking for spousal support because apparently Sabrina was supposed to be paying him alimony from their original separation agreement and never did. So now Sabrina owes him back alimony plus legal fees. The hospital she works at is still investigating the bigamy situation. She might not lose her license, but she's definitely not getting promoted anytime soon. Her reputation is trashed. Jude called me 2 weeks ago, said their financial situation was untenable, that they couldn't afford to support Mom and Dad long-term, that I needed to contribute. I asked him why I would do that. He said because they're my parents, too. I reminded him that according to Mom, she only has one son. That Jude is her pride and joy and her everything. So clearly he should handle this alone since he's the only real son. He lost it. Started screaming about how I was being petty and cruel. How Mom was on antidepressants now and barely functioning. How Dad sits in their guest room all day staring at the wall. How this was destroying everyone. I asked if Mom had apologized yet. He said she was too depressed to have that conversation. I said, then we have nothing to discuss. Jude said I was going to regret this when they were both dead and I had to live with what I'd done. I told him that they were going to regret humiliating me in front of 300 people for the rest of their lives, however long that turned out to be. He hung up on me. Thanksgiving was last week. I didn't go to any family gatherings. I spent the day at my condo with takeout and a movie. Peaceful. Meanwhile, according to Aunt Anna, who texted me updates, the family dinner was a complete disaster. Grandfather hosted like he does every year. But this year, he made it clear Dad wasn't welcome. Dad showed up anyway with Mom. Grandfather told them to leave. Dad refused. Grandfather called the police. Dad and Mom left before the cops arrived, but not before Dad caused a huge scene yelling about how I'd poisoned everyone against him and destroyed the family. Half the relatives sided with Dad and left with him. The other half stayed with Grandfather. The family is completely split now. There are people who aren't speaking to each other. Cousin group chats have been abandoned. Years of relationships are destroyed. Anna texted me later that night asking if I was happy with what I'd accomplished. I told her I didn't accomplish anything. They did this to themselves. She said I was the catalyst. I said no. Mom standing up at that wedding was the catalyst. Everything after that was just consequences. Then yesterday happened. Yesterday was the big one. Mom, Dad, Jude, and Sabrina all showed up at my office together. They made it past building security by claiming they had a meeting with me. They didn't. They ambushed me in the lobby as I was leaving for lunch. All four of them, standing there waiting for me. I should have called security immediately, but honestly, I wanted to hear what they had to say. This was the confrontation I'd been waiting for since September. We went to a conference room. I told the receptionist if we weren't out in 30 minutes to call security. Jude spoke first, said they'd come to make a final appeal, that the situation had gotten completely out of hand and we needed to find a way to fix this as a family. I asked what their proposal was. Dad said if I agreed to drop the restraining order and help them get back on their feet financially, they would agree to family counseling, all of us together, working through our issues. I asked if that included an apology for the wedding. Dad said they were willing to discuss what happened at the wedding during counseling. I told them that wasn't an apology, that was kicking the can down the road. Mom said they were trying to find a path forward and I was being difficult. I said I wasn't the one who called someone a mistake in front of 300 people. Sabrina jumped in then said this was affecting her too, that she'd done nothing to me and didn't deserve to have her life ruined. I reminded her she threw wine on me at her wedding. She said that was because she was upset by what was happening, that it was a reaction, not an attack. I told her it was assault regardless of her emotional state. I said she could have gotten divorced before marrying my brother. We went in circles like this for 20 minutes. Each of them taking turns trying to make me see reason, trying to convince me that my response was disproportionate, trying to get me to accept partial responsibility for how bad things had gotten. Finally, I asked them directly, do any of you actually believe you were wrong for what happened at that wedding? Not just willing to discuss it in counseling. Actually wrong. Silence. Long silence. Then Dad said it was a joke that went too far. I asked if he thought it was funny. He said at the time it seemed appropriate given the context. I asked what context makes calling someone a mistake appropriate. He said Mom had been drinking and he was supporting his wife. I asked if he believed what he said. He said he was just backing up Mom. I turned to Mom, asked her the same question. Did she believe I was a mistake? She said, of course not. But I'd always been difficult and she'd been frustrated with how I never appreciated what they did for me. I asked what they'd done for me specifically. She listed off food, shelter, education, the basics, the legal requirements of having a child, nothing else. I asked Jude if he defended me at any point during that speech. He said he was uncomfortable, but it was his wedding day and he didn't want to cause a scene. I told him Mom caused the scene, not me. He said I made it worse by walking out, that I could have just laughed it off and let it go. And there it was. After everything, they still thought I should have just taken it. Should have laughed along with everyone else. Should have accepted being publicly humiliated and moved on. I stood up, told them we were done. Dad said we weren't done until we fix this. I said there's nothing to fix. That I'd given them multiple opportunities to actually apologize and take responsibility and they'd failed every single time. That I was done waiting for them to become people capable of basic human decency. Mom started crying. Said I was tearing the family apart. I told her she did that when she stood up at that wedding. That every single thing that happened after that was a direct result of her choices and Dad's choices and Jude's choices and Sabrina's choices. That I didn't make Dad have an affair. Didn't make Mom take out a secret mortgage. Didn't make Sabrina commit bigamy. I just stopped protecting them from the consequences of their own actions. Jude said I'd systematically destroyed everyone's life over hurt feelings. I told him these weren't hurt feelings. This was 29 years of being treated like I didn't matter, culminating in being publicly disowned. That if he couldn't understand the difference, that explained a lot about why he thought it was okay to laugh while Mom eviscerated me. Sabrina said I was being vindictive. I said yes, I was. That I'd spent 4 years collecting information and waiting for the right moment to use it. That when they handed me that moment by humiliating me in front of 300 people, I took it. That this wasn't a spontaneous reaction. This was premeditated consequence delivery and I'd do it again. Dad asked what it would take for me to stop. I told him I wasn't doing anything anymore, that the dominoes were already falling, that their lives were falling apart because of their own choices and there was nothing I needed to do at this point except watch. He said I was cruel. I said he told 300 people they should have given me up for adoption. He said I needed to let that go. I said no. That I was going to remember that moment for the rest of my life and he was going to live with the consequences for the rest of his. I called security, told them I had 4 people who needed to be escorted out. They arrived within 3 minutes. Mom was still crying. Dad was yelling about how I'd regret this. Jude was calling me a sociopath. Sabrina was just staring at me like she couldn't believe this was happening. As they were being walked out, Mom turned and said she wished she'd never had me, that her life would have been better if I'd never been born. I told her that's probably the first honest thing she'd said to me in years. Security escorted them out. I went back to my office, sat at my desk, and felt absolutely nothing except relief that it was finally over. That was yesterday. I haven't heard from any of them since. I don't expect to. We're done. Actually done this time. Grandfather called me last night. Said he'd heard what happened, that he was proud of me for standing my ground. That Dad had made his choices and now he had to live with them. He said the will was finalized and when he passed, half of everything would come to me and half to Aunt Anna. That Dad would get nothing. I told Grandfather he didn't have to do that. He said yes he did. That Dad had proven he valued image over family and money over character. That he didn't deserve to inherit anything from a man whose values he'd completely rejected. Anna called this morning, said the family is completely fractured now and there's no path back. That people have taken permanent sides. That upcoming holidays will require separate gatherings. That some relationships will probably never recover. She asked if I was satisfied with the outcome. I told her I wasn't satisfied. Satisfaction would require them actually understanding what they did wrong and showing genuine remorse. But I was content. Content with the fact that they're facing real consequences. Content with the fact that I stood up for myself. Content with the fact that I'm not the one who has to live with being the person who publicly disowned their own child. She said she understood, but it was still sad to watch. I agreed it was sad, but it was also necessary. So that's where things stand. Mom and Dad are living in Jude's guest room with no jobs, no house, and no prospects. Jude's drowning in debt, supporting 4 people. Sabrina's career is permanently damaged. The family is split. Grandfather's will cuts Dad out entirely, and I'm sitting in my condo that I bought with my own money, working at the job I built on my own, living the life I created without any of their help. They wanted 1 son. They got 1 son and that son is handling all of their problems now while they face the reality of what it means to publicly disown someone who actually had the power to destroy them. I don't know if this counts as a happy ending, but it's the ending I earned. And unlike the life they gave me, this ending is entirely on my terms. To everyone who said I should forgive them or that family is worth fighting for, they stopped being my family when Mom stood up at that wedding. What they're facing now isn't my revenge anymore. It's just reality catching up to people who spent decades making terrible choices and expecting no consequences. I'm done updating. I'm done engaging with them. I'm moving forward with my life and they can figure out theirs without me. They humiliated me in front of 300 people. I made 3 phone calls and sent 1 email and now they're the ones begging while I'm the one walking away. That's it. That's the story. Make of it what you will.